The Hackettstown Free Public Library is happy to present this program with Stephanie from the Pennsylvania Bat Rescue. So, Stephanie, why don't you take it away? And if anybody joins in, I'll let them in.
Okay, sounds great. Thank you so much. And
Thank
thank
you.
you for thank you for joining us on this beautiful day. I know it's wonderful outside and the last thing we probably want to do is be indoors, but I appreciate your time. And my name is Steph Stronzik. I am the founder and executive director of Pennsylvania Bat Rescue. I have been working with bats for almost 17 years. They are one of my favorite species. I've worked with a lot of different species of wildlife throughout the years. And they're my favorite because they're so misrepresented and so misunderstood. I am licensed through our Pennsylvania Game Commission. And so let's get started. So our mission is conservation, education, and rehabilitation. We take all three of those mission statements in account every day. We're living every single one of them. Um, Conservation, most of us at the rehab center have a degree in science, including myself, and we are stewards of our land. Without the environment being healthy enough for the animals, what we do in captivity would otherwise not be important. So it's really important that we have a suitable environment, a healthy environment for these animals to get back out into nature and essentially uh, do what they do best, which is for these guys eating insects. And education is reaching out and doing a lot of education programs because ultimately all of our bats come into care because a member of the public is either walking or they notice an animal out of place, out of ordinary. And if it's a bat, they give us a call. And once that bat comes into care, we then do a full examination and we start the rehabilitation process. So we are dedicated to the rehabilitation of our native bat species. And so bats are really interesting. They are the only flying mammals. No other mammal is capable of flight. There are flying squirrels, but they actually are gliding. They are not flying. So they are the only mammals that fly. And they have a really long lifespan for their size. So we will get into that in a few minutes. But because they are very long lived, compared to other species. They are one of the slowest reproducing mammals for their size. So they typically give birth to one baby bat every year. Sometimes they will have twins. And those babies are born right now is and today is the first day of May. So at the end of May is when we typically see bats coming into our care, or the early June is when they start having their babies. So the end of May, all the way through August, the female bats, depending on their species, they will have baby bats at some point. And bats do fulfill a specialized niche. They don't just consume one species of insect or one type of fruit, one species of fruit. They all have very unique niches, so they're very important for our environment, and we'll get into that. So the Brandt's bat is a UK bat, and it's the oldest recorded bat. It's a very tiny Myotis species. And this bat was banded in the 1970s and recaptured 41 years later. And that is the oldest known bat on record. There could be bats that are older that have never been captured or banded. And so we don't know exactly how long they lived. We just know they have, for recapture purposes, a very long lifespan. Bats have been around for a really long time. So around 52 to 50 million, 50 to 52 million years ago, and they have survived mass extinctions that killed off 75% of life on Earth. Being that bats were very small at this time, they were able to survive mass extinctions. And so not much has changed between the fossil that was discovered 52.5 million years old. I believe this is the oldest fossil to date, and I believe it was discovered in Wyoming. And so bats really have remained relatively unchanged. So they have the same bone anatomy as we do. They have finger bones, they have leg bones, they have toes. They are very, very similar to us. However, on the evolutionary tree, bats are more closely related to dolphins and horses. But that being said, they really aren't closely related to anything. They are so unique that they have their own classification. So this is a fossil from 52.5 million years ago. Oh, and I forgot to mention, at the end of each finger bone, so these long bones right here, they have little nails. This fossil has little claws, and bats today don't have those claws. They do have thumbnails, but they don't have claws at every single finger, at the tip of every finger. So this is a depiction that looks something relative to the species of animals that would be around the time the bats were living on the planet. So you can see on this chart, they were part of the Eocene period, which is around 30, I think it's 34 million years ago and upward to 50 something million years ago. Humans did not inhabit the planet until about 3 million years ago. So bats have been around for a much longer time than humans have been around. And so bats are really interesting. They have their own order called Chiroptera, and that translates to hand wing. So bats' wings are their hands, very similar if they were a human. They have the same bone structure as we do. They have very long fingers that give them the flight capability, but that thumb is still relatively similar to ours. It is a thumb. It is smaller than the other fingers. And unlike birds have all their bones fused together, so they don't have the ability to manipulate flight the way that bats do. And so this is another representation of those bones. You can see they're color-coded. That can give you an idea of where exactly on the structure of the animal is similar to the humans. And so I just threw this in here because it's a little funny. A lot of our bats have lots of different names. Here at the rehab, we call them floofies or floofs or floofy poos. So they are very furry and they are just amazing animals. So there are over 1,400 species of bats worldwide. They occupy every single continent except Antarctica, and they occupy a variety of biologically diverse habitats throughout the world. So they are classified into two categories, the megabats and the microbats. The megabats are giant bats. They are more so of the flying fox structure versus our microbats, which are the smaller bats. So the flying foxes have really small ears compared to the size of their head and bigger eyes versus the microbats that have small eyes and relatively large ears. And so the smallest bat in the world is a kitty hognose bat. They are not native to North America. They're about 1 inch long. They weigh about 2 grams and eat spiders, beetles, wasps, and other insects. And the largest bat in the world is a golden crown flying fox. Its wingspan is about 5.5 to 6 feet, and they can weigh up to 2.4 pounds. They consume mostly figs. However, they will consume other fruit species as well. Insectivorous bats are the most abundant species or type of classification of bats in the world. They are approximately 72% of all bats found in the world are insectivorous. And so in this picture, you will see the hoary bat in the top right. They prefer moths and beetles, whereas the big brown in the bottom right prefers beetles, wasps, ants, flies, and mosquitoes. However, the big brown will also eat and consume stink bugs, gypsy or spongy moths, and they have been known. Rutgers University did a study a few years ago and found spotted lanternfly exoskeletons in their guano. Frugivores are the flying foxes, the larger species of bats, and as their name suggests, they are fruit-eating bats. And some of these bats will consume the old world bananas, avocados, mangoes, dates, and figs, and they are responsible for about 95 to 98% of the rainforest due to their seed dispersal. So they are very messy eaters. They suck the juices out of the pulp and then they spit the rest of the fruit out, including some larger seeds. The smaller seeds will sometimes pass through their digestive tract, which is really important because those seeds, actually some species of plants require passing through the digestive tract of a bat in order to germinate. So the bat's stomach acids, I am not sure what exactly it does, but they help the seed kind of shed part of the coating, and then the seed will be excreted through the guano and drop to the ground and hopefully germinate as a tree. Nectivores, we have, so I didn't mention, but most of our bats here in North America are insectivorous. We do have in the United States, we have 45 different species of bats. And out of those 45, 2 of them are nectar feeding bats, and they are responsible for pollination. And over 530 plants rely on bats for pollination, including the mango, banana, durian, guava, and agave. And agave, we're going to talk about, is really, really important. Some of these plants have a really interesting coexisting relationship with the bats. They require the bats for pollination. So these are flowers that you kind of assume sometimes a lot of flowers bloom during the day for pollination of butterflies and other insects, but a lot of flowers also bloom at night for pollination of moths and sometimes bats. So 2 species of pollinating bats are found in the southwest portion of the United States, which is New Mexico and Arizona. And the agave is really important because it is Mexico's #1 export. It generates a lot of economic value for that country. However, overharvesting agave has caused a severe decline in the nectar feeding bats. Many, many decades ago, the bats were listed as endangered, but through wonderful conservation efforts, the bats were actually able to be removed from the endangered species list because there are many, many conservation efforts to help reduce the amount of overharvesting and when plants are harvested as well. Agave grows slow, so it takes a long time for the flowers to mature, and the flowers bloom at night, some of them only blooming for a single night. And so this is a long-tongued bat, and as you can see, the pollen is all over the face. And this bat, because the nectar isn't nutritious enough and has enough calories, these bats have to visit many different flowers every single night and in turn pollinating several different flowers. So this particular bat species has a tongue that is 2/3 its body length, which is incredible. And if you know anyone that lives in Arizona or the southwest portion of the United States and has hummingbird feeders, they might also have night visitors. There are nectar feeding bats that will come and try to take a drink during the evening hours. There are carnivorous bats. These are bats that consume um, small frogs, lizards, rodents, and sometimes small birds. And that in the top right is Dr. Merlin Tuttle, and Dr. Merlin Tuttle is what we consider the grandfather of bat conservation, and he is handling a carnivorous bat. There are piscivore species of bats. These are bats that consume fish, and they have unusually hind limbs and very, very large feet. And those feet are to scoop up the small minnows at the surface of the water. These guys are an echolocating species, and they are able to echolocate enough to determine the ripples in the water and where the minnows or small fish are closest to the water and scoop them up with those giant hind feet. So you can see in the bottom right corner there and in the top right, it actually has a little fish in its foot. And out of 1,469 different species, 3 of them are vampire bats. And these bats are found in the South American region and Latin America. They are really an interesting species. They're only a few inches long. They are not big at all. And in their saliva, they have an anticoagulant enzyme, and that helps to reduce clotting factors. And they use an anesthetic as well. So they're kind enough to numb the area before they make a little nick or a little bite mark. And they prefer chicken blood over anything else. There is a species that prefers mammals, but it's usually livestock. And they have infrared receptors on their lips to determine where the blood is closest to the surface. In Pennsylvania, we have 9 different species of bats. In the left bat is a female eastern red bat, and the right is a male eastern red bat. They're the only species of bats here in PA that have sexual dimorphism, which is being able to tell the difference between the male and the female. So the male is much brighter, similar to a male cardinal, and the female is a little bit more dull. In the middle is what we call a Seminole bat. This is a southern range bat. It typically does not range this far north, but because it's becoming too hot in the south, these bats are starting to come up into Pennsylvania, and we've had, I believe we had 2 so far in the last few years. They are a little bit bigger than the eastern red bats. They're kind of in between what we call a horay bat and an eastern red bat, and they're a little bit darker, and you can tell them based on their fur colorations. Other bat species in Pennsylvania are the silverhair bat. This bat loves to roost in trees, so this is a foliage roosting bat. The eastern red bats and the Seminole bats are also foliage roosting. These guys will roost in black cherry trees. They will roost underneath the exfoliating bark of shagbark hickory, and they will also choose to roost in crevices within the tree hollows, abandoned woodpecker holes, and things like that. The horay bat on the right is the largest bat species here in Pennsylvania with a 14-inch wingspan. And they are quite a larger species of bat found here. And they occupy trees as well, usually deciduous and conifers, and they roost 20 to 40 feet up in those trees. And they are a solitary species. So when we get those severe storms during the summer, these bats are all roosting in trees when those very nasty winds come through. And almost every single time after a severe tornado producing storm, we will get several foliage roosting bats that might be injured, might be grounded, might be waterlogged. So please, if you're out during the day or evening after a really bad storm and you find a bat, do not hesitate to call us. We have several different species of crevice bats. We have the little brown, the tricolored, the evening, which is actually a south range species. They are not typically found here in Pennsylvania, but again, it is getting warmer, so they are starting to range further north. We have the northern long-eared bat, the big brown, the Indiana, and the small-footed. And out of all these bats, the little brown is state endangered. The tricolored is pending federal endangerment. The northern long-eared bat is federally endangered. The Indiana bat is federally endangered, and the small-footed bat is state threatened. So a lot of species are in decline, and we're going to get into how and why. So how do bats see at night? Well, they actually have pretty good eyesight. They see better at night, but they also can see with sound. So they produce this echo, and the echo bounces off of everything and comes and travels back into their ear, and it gives them a picture of their surroundings in real time. And so this is called an echolocation. They are able to determine a single human hair using echolocation. They know exactly what species of insect they're hunting. They know if that insect has smooth or rough antennae, and their echolocation is fine-tuned. However, occasionally when juveniles are flying, they're kind of like teenagers learning to drive, they will fly into things. They do not get tangled in your hair, but they can fly very close to you because you are attracting mosquitoes and gnats. That is a food source for bats. And so this is called a spectrogram, and the top portion of the spectrogram in the blue is a search phase call produced by big brown bats, a single big brown bat. And this is basically a visual of what their echolocation were to look like. And so every bat has a different echolocation and a different frequency of echolocation. So it's almost like a fingerprint for that species of bat. So the big brown, when they're searching, and they're basically screaming out to the environment, waiting for their echoes to return, that's what the search phase echo looks like. The bottom is actually a social call between females. So their echolocation changes based on what they're doing. And I'm not sure if this video is going to work, but it's really neat. So let me see if it will work for you.
The all-new GoDaddy Arrow
Sorry.
helps you get your business online in minutes with the power of AI. With the perfect name, a great logo, and a beautiful.
From their mouse immensely. This call from any object in its
Yeah, it's not really working for us.
What's that?
It's not really working for us.
Oh no. Okay.
It's also
Sorry.
because I think you have your screen set up to only show the
Oh, just the PowerPoint. Okay.
slides. Yeah, but the sound is
understand.
weird too. Yeah.
Okay, all right. Sorry about that. So there is a bridge in Austin, Texas. It's called the Congress Avenue Bridge, and it is home to some of the largest urban concentrations of bats in the world. These are Mexican free-tail bats, and it's over 1.5 million bats call this bridge home. In Austin, many, many years ago, the city council wanted to destroy the bridge because of fear of rabies. So Dr. Merlin Tuttle, who I mentioned earlier, relocated to Austin, Texas, and was able to convince the council not to destroy the bridge. And over many decades, the bats have generated lots of tourism, and so much so that over $1 million is generated in tourism just from people coming all around the world to see these bats. And the Bracken Cave, which is a little bit further away from Austin, is home to 20 million bats. These are also Mexican free-tail bats. So what's really interesting is a huge concentration of bats, and these are migratory bats that fly south for the winter. They will migrate south and then, of course, migrate back every spring. And so Austin's meteorologists can determine when the bats are coming back because they migrate together in so many numbers that they actually produce almost a storm. So, of course, if you have 1,400 species of anything, you will have bats with funny faces. This is a horseshoe-nosed bat, and they have a leaf nose, and of course, they get the name from the shape of their nose. This is an echolocating bat, so it's anticipated that they use their leaf nose to produce their echolocation and returns into their giant satellite dish ears. This is a fish-eating bat, and this is called a bulldog bat, and they more so to me look like a Great Dane. And the wrinkle-faced bat, they're so ugly, they are cute. And those little cartilage channels, this is a fruit-eating bat. And the cartilage channels actually help to channel fruit juices into their mouth. So that's a really kind of ingenious way of, I suppose, getting as much juice as you possibly can. And of course, the fruit-eating bats, they're very, very messy. So of course, they do suck on the juices, occasionally eat a little bit of pulp, but for the most part, they are just chewing at the pulp a little bit, not ingesting any seeds, depending on the species. And there is a coexisting relationship between this pitcher plant and this little tiny bat. It's a Wooley's Hartwick bat, and this is a very interesting relationship because the pitcher plant grows in nutrient-poor soil where nitrogen levels are very, very low. And this bat uses this pitcher plant, which is carnivorous, to sleep, basically. It provides a nice, safe place to sleep. And in return, the pitcher plant, the bat will defecate before it takes off, and because it's an insect-eating bat, has really high concentrations of nitrogen. So the bat will poop and the pitcher plant is fertilized. So both have this beautiful relationship, this mutualistic relationship. And there's the Hartwick's woolly bat. You can see them inside the pitcher plant. Honduran white bats are really small. They're about the size of a cotton ball, and they're the only bats to modify their environment for their specific needs. So these bats will chew along the banana leaf or stalk of any leaf just so that the plant doesn't die, but enough for the leaf to fold down and create kind of a tent where they can safely sleep. Our bats here in Pennsylvania cannot chew into structures of buildings and things like that. Their teeth are very small and fragile. They would break them if they were able to chew on wood. This is a disc-wing bat. These are a very interesting species as well. They have little suction cups on their feet and thumbs, and they also live vertically, so they don't roost upside down. They roost upright, and they roost in a leaf that is almost cone-shaped, and that is for acoustic reasons. It helps them to hear better. And if they need to leave, they simply just fly out. They don't have to turn around upright and try to maneuver out of the leaf. They're already facing that position. And our mission at Pennsylvania Bat Rescue is providing professional treatment and care for injured orphan and sick wild animals, so that our intention is to release them back into the wild. We work with 3 different veterinarians, and our veterinarians provide a lot of resources and expertise on situations that we might not be familiar with, or changing some of our protocols, because we're always learning something new about these wonderful and amazing creatures. One of our interesting rehab stories was quite a few years ago. We received a bat that was behind a bat house at Lake Nakamixon State Park. If you've ever been there, it's a beautiful park. They have bat houses at the headquarters. This particular girl in the fall, they checked the bat house before they brought it down to try to clean it, and she wasn't inside of it, she was behind it. And when they removed it, she fell several feet to the ground. And instead of having a fractured wing like I expected, she actually had a dislocated jaw. And so our veterinarian said we could euthanize her or try this unique procedure that they've never done before. And so, of course, we opted for the procedure. And they made a little incision at the jawline and realigned her mandible and maxilla, so her jaw, and sutured right through it. So she was able to heal after several weeks. Not only did she heal, but she was able to echolocate, forage for food, and fly as well. So she was released back at Lake Nakamixon. And immediately after we released her, she started foraging for insects, and it was wonderful. We do get a lot of bats with head trauma. This is B. Arthur. B. Arthur is a permanent resident. She is in sanctuary, so she is not an education bat. She is very old. She was found last October hanging on this metal wiring fence for 3 days. And during that time, there had been a severe storm that passed by, and she became drenched. She was unable to fly because she did collide with something, whether it was a window or she was attacked by something, we are unsure. But she did sustain severe head trauma. And not only that, she only has 4 teeth. So these guys do have between 32 and 38 teeth, depending on the species of bat. So B. Arthur is with us forever. Glue traps are inhumane for any species of animal. We also get bats that are stuck to fly paper. So if people put sticky fly paper outside because there's a lot of flies or insects, bats can also get stuck to that. And one of the reasons is because fly paper or any glue band can attract insects. Insects become stuck and they become a really good, easy food target for bats. And so bats are trying to get a meal and become stuck to these things. We are asking anyone who gets a glue trap bat or any adhesive on this animal, if you find them on anything, please give us or your local wildlife rehabilitator a call, because if you remove them with oil and just set them free, they will die. That oil weighs them down and they become hypothermic. So these guys are endotherms, which means they thermoregulate. And just like us, we thermoregulate as well. But if there's oil on them, it creates a really bad situation. Not only can they not fly, they cannot eat, and then they are freezing cold. So please get it to a wildlife rehabilitator. These bats we typically have for at least a week or several weeks. So it's not a simple remove them and they'll be fine. They go through an entire process for us to be able to release them back into the wild. We do love our fur babies. Keep all cats and dogs indoors or on a leash. Of course, you can't keep dogs indoors all the time, but we do ask that you keep them on a leash unless you have a fenced-in yard. Cats are not a natural predator, so bats are not, and most wildlife do not know them as a natural predator. So when bats take a drink, they don't perch on, kind of like birds do at a bird bath. They can't perch because of the way that their feet are designed. So they have to skim the surface of water. Also, when they hunt very low to the ground sometimes and become very easy targets for cats. And so we do get a lot of cat-caught bats, so please try to keep them indoors. We do get bats with broken wings. They are a flying mammal, so of course we will get bats with broken wings. We do everything in our power to try to pin their wings. So our veterinarian does a surgical procedure and places a needle into the bones so they are stabilized, and then we wrap them to make sure they are completely stabilized. And after a few weeks, that pin is removed, and we do physical therapy on the bats in hopes to release them. We do raise baby bats. Again, baby season is just around the corner. And so if you find a baby bat and you know where the colony is, try to reunite them. Reuniting with mom is the best thing you can do. If you are unable to reunite them, contact your local wildlife rehabilitator. If you're in Southeast Pennsylvania, that would be us. We take in lots of baby bats every year. And baby bats are really exceptional. They grow very fast from the time they're born until they're capable of flying. It's about 8 to 10 weeks. So they grow very fast and they are provided. Mom has a very unique milk supplement that she gives them. It's a very unique milk, not substitution, a supplement with lots of protein, lots of calcium. So we don't give baby bats kitten milk or puppy milk because those animals are very slow growing. Bats require very, very specialized milk supplementation. So please make sure you get that animal to a licensed wildlife rehabber. And of course, baby bats are super cute. This is a Virginia big-eared bat. He will never grow into those ears. They have the most beautiful big ears. And baby bats are born with full-grown thumbs and full-grown feet. And so that's equivalent to a 100-pound woman giving birth to a 33-pound baby with size 10 feet. And you can see that here, this is a fruit bat baby. So very large thumbs, very large feet. And that's because mom and baby are inseparable for the first week of life. That baby requires constant care from mom. And so they are hanging on to mom while she's foraging at night. So while she's foraging, flying the night sky, this little baby is hanging on to mom. This is Barnabas Collins, and Barnabas Collins has metabolic bone disease because someone gave him an inappropriate milk formula, and he is a big brown bat. He is not a vampire bat. And so what happened was his forearms or his wings, the long bone, was too short. So it's about 10 millimeters too short, which is quite a bit for a bat that is a flying animal. And also his teeth, instead of growing straight down, they grew out a little bit, giving him his signature vampire bat look. And so remember, these guys require very specialized milk formula. And this is what metabolic bone disease can look like. This bat was never releasable. Those finger bones should be straight. This kind of looks more like rheumatoid arthritis. It is a painful condition. So it's very important to make sure they are receiving appropriate care. White nose syndrome is a devastating disease. It was found in upstate New York in 2006. This is a cold thriving fungus. So it really is an issue during the colder months from December all the way up until even now. We just received a little brown bat yesterday with white nose syndrome. So even though it's warmer, these bats are still suffering from white nose syndrome, because it takes a long time to heal from this fungus, if they heal from the fungus. And so white nose syndrome thrives in low temperatures between 40 and 55 degrees. Typically, the fungus really likes 52 to 55 degrees with high humidity. So this is a fungus that is going to survive and cause issues in caves and mines. It's not going to cause issues in attics, bat houses, or barns. 11 species are affected by white nose syndrome, and the second largest hibernaculum in Pennsylvania, which is in Bucks County, was home to 10,000 little brown bats. And in 2010, I think the last of them did not survive. So this is our state biologist. He's outside of that cave in the middle of winter, and those are sadly all dead little brown bats. And so species affected by white nose syndrome, we have 9 species in Pennsylvania, very similar to New Jersey. Our bats are big brown, little brown, tricolored Indiana, small-footed, silver hair, and northern long-eared bat. And so more than 6 million bats have died since this fungus was discovered. It made its way to Pennsylvania in 2008 and just decimated our populations. This fungus was accidentally introduced. It is not something that was intentional. And because our bats are not familiar with this fungus, of course, anything invasive can really take over and destroy a lot of, whether it's a plant invasive or in this case, a fungus. And so it got its name because of the white powdery substance or fungal spores on the nose, and they can also be on the ears and the wings. And the top left photo You can kind of see a fluorescence of orangish color. That is a UV light, and the fungal spores iridesce when they are abundant. So we use UV light to detect white nose syndrome. And in Pennsylvania, we have the most caves and mines of any state in the Northeast. So it is a race to save our bats at this time. And this is what the fungus looks like. It is a fungus that will degrade the wing membrane of bats, and it creates a lot of issues. So bats, part of their evolutionary adaptation is it's a survival strategy. Some of them will migrate south for the winter, while others will choose to stay and hibernate. When they hibernate at very specific temperatures, usually somewhere in 40 to 50 degrees, depending on what species they are and their tolerance level. And so the fungus will disrupt their hibernation. Bats, part of their strategy is eating as many insects as they can in the fall and plumping up so that when they go into hibernation, they can survive off of their fat storage. And when the fungus is present, it causes this irritation because it is a fungus. It's a necrotic fungus. It causes all these major lesions and holes and tears in their wings. It disrupts their hibernation so that these bats are waking up 2 to 3 times more than they normally would. And so they are burning through their fat reserves. And by February, March, they are totally depleted and coming out of the caves and mines in search of food and water. Sadly, that is a very cold time of the year, and there are no insects, no food, and there's no water. So at our rescue center, we have developed a captive treatment for white nose syndrome. It is not something that we can use out in the wild. It is an antimicrobial. And so it takes many, many weeks for us to rehabilitate these animals. And as you can see by the 5th image, the white nose syndrome is totally gone and the wing is completely healed. And this is an occurrence map. So white nose syndrome biologists thought that it would not survive past the Mississippi, but it is, and it's actually causing a lot of problems for Colorado at this moment. So we are working diligently with bat rehabilitators in Colorado to help save their bat populations. So this map is colorful. It's not good. We're hoping that at some point populations stabilize, but they are still in decline. So some of the things we can do for bats is if there are cave restrictions, please adhere to them. Bats that are disturbed during the winter months are bats that are not going to survive. Once they start thermoregulating and increasing their body temperature, they will become active and you will disturb them and they will burn off those fat reserves. So an interesting thing about bats is they go through daily torpor, which is lowering their body temperature to ambient temperatures, as long as it's not below freezing. And they slow their metabolic rate. So they are basically in a really slow state. And when they're hibernating, torpor is really deep. So they lower their body temperature to 55. Their respiratory immune system, everything slows down quite a bit. So every single day, they go through short bouts of torpor to conserve energy. This is another survival strategy, energy strategy that they use. And we also do a lot of different things at the rehab. Again, we're not just rehabilitation, we are also conservation. So our volunteers, our interns, and our staff do go out in the field. We do white nose syndrome surveys, we do acoustical surveying, and we do a lot of different things. We work very closely with our state biologists, and we love getting out into the field. And so I think it was last year or 2 years ago, we did white nose syndrome research with our state biologists. And so here are some of our staff. We also have a sister organization in Delaware. So we are the parent organization to the Delaware Bat Rehabilitation and Conservation. This is Keisha. She is a U.S. forester. She works for the U.S. Forest Service, and she loves bats, and we are helping her to establish her organization. Real quick, some of the species that you see here, you can see the percent of decline. This was a survey done by our Pennsylvania Game Commission in 2015. So this is not quite updated, but they are still around the same percent. So you can see the little brown bat in Pennsylvania was the most abundant bat with an estimate of 3 million individuals living throughout our state during the warmer months. Since the presence of white nose syndrome, they have been reduced to 1% of their population, and in some cases less than 1%. So around 3,000 to 5,000 at any given time will be here in Pennsylvania. That is a massive reduction from 3 million. So a lot of bats are in decline in Pennsylvania. Bats are a rabies vector species. Never handle them barehanded. By state regulations, many states have this regulation that if a bat is handled barehanded, we have to euthanize it for rabies testing. So the first thing we do is tell people, please don't handle any wildlife barehanded because they do have the potential for zoonotic diseases like rabies. You're also protecting yourself and them when you're wearing gloves. Raccoons have the highest incidence of rabies in Pennsylvania and in most states. So don't cuddle the trash pandas. They're super cute, but they do have a highest incidence of rabies. And some of the things that you can do for bats is building a bat house. We have a few slides on here about bat houses. Humane exclusion and relocation. In Pennsylvania, it's illegal to disturb colonies of bats. It's also illegal to kill colonies of bats. Humane exclusion can only be done in the spring and the fall because in the winter they are hibernating. And if you put a bat outside in the middle of winter, there's no food or water. And in the summer, because they only give birth to one baby. Coexisting with bats, they are not here to harm us. They are just here as insect control. So some of these species can eat up to 1,000 mosquito-sized insects in a night or sometimes in an hour, depending on the species. There is a bat, the tricolored bat, that can eat its body weight in 30 minutes. And one of the best things we can do is stop using insecticides and pesticides in general. We are losing our insect diversity, and that is important for the sustainability of bats and birds, along with many other amphibians and reptiles. Planting native is very important. There are a lot of species of plants that are really beautiful that are native. So please try to incorporate those native plants. And leave the leaves, although it's not fall. I do put this in because we do have foliage roosting bats like the eastern red bat found throughout the Northeast, and it loves to roost in dead leaves during the early fall. But once it becomes too cold, they will let go of their branch and glide to the forest floor or the ground and hibernate under leaf litter. So some of them will migrate south and some of them will choose to stay behind. If you're raking the leaves, mowing the leaves, burning the leaves, you never know. There's lots of insect eggs in those leaves. There might even be bats in those leaves. Some of the places you can get native plants in Pennsylvania is here. I'm sure there's native plant sales everywhere this time of the year. So just Google native plant sales. And why you should not plant native or non-native, because this is a non-native burdock and they have sticky burrs on them. And this eastern red bat got stuck to this burr. Birds and bats do become entangled in these, and in most cases they don't survive because they've been there for quite some time. Bat houses are really important. They provide a safe place for bats to sleep that isn't somebody's house. Sometimes, especially here in Pennsylvania, we have a lot of old homes and lots of big barns. But bat houses are a great way to help your populations of bats. So we recommend the Pennsylvania Game Commission this is a particular bat house that was built by the Pennsylvania Game Commission. We also recommend Bat Conservation and Management, Bat B&B, and Bat Conservation International as well. Bat houses should be facing south to southeast with 8 to 10 hours of direct sunlight. Most of the bats that inhabit a bat house are females getting ready to give birth. Their babies are born naked, so they like it nice and hot. So those bat houses can get up to 120 degrees. Make sure you place bat houses 10 to 15 feet from the ground. I would also suggest mounting at least 2. If you have 1, that's fine, but make sure it's multiple chambers so that they can thermoregulate in case it gets too hot. We also use an aluminum baffle. The photo on the right has a black aluminum baffle. We install it at hip level and up several feet because raccoons are a predator of bats, and raccoons can climb very well. Bat B&B is also offering 15% off your entire order if you choose to purchase a bat house with them, and 10% of those sales are donated back to our rehabilitation efforts. Bat removal and conservation, we work really closely with a gentleman who runs a company locally, and last year he helped us save a lot of baby bats. And so he is licensed to do bat removal at certain times of the year. And when he does these removals, the bats are obviously acclimated to that area and know that area as their summer roost. So he installs donated bat houses that are donated to us that people either don't want to install or don't have appropriate ways to install them. So they donate them to us, and we upcycle them and donate them back to the public for those who are interested in having a bat house and have exclusion work done by this company, because he's the only one that installs it for free of charge, because it gives them a safe place to sleep and to have their excuse me, to have their babies. So he helped us save 70 baby bats last year by reuniting them, which was a huge effort, and the moms were able to successfully raise them. We are expanding. We are currently at the end stage of our expansion project. We are one of the larger bat rehabilitation organizations in the Northeast. So we are running out of room. And so this is a blueprint of what our space is going to look like. And so we are in need of some funding. But we did partner with Bat World Sanctuary, which is located in Texas. And we did decide to be a satellite site for rescued fruit bats. And so fruit bats might be rescued or confiscated from the exotic pet trade, retired from zoos and aquariums, or given to us by somebody who owns fruit bats. There are ways to, unfortunately own them. We really strongly recommend that you don't, because they are messy, they are social, and you need a lot of them in order to make sure that they have what they need in their captive life. Unfortunately, these bats, because they are now in captivity, they can never be re-released or released back into their natural setting. A lot of them were born in captivity, so they don't know how to hunt. And these are fruit bats, so they don't know how to forage, and they don't know how to behave like a bat out in nature, so they cannot be released. We do have a goal of $40,000. We have half of that right now, and we are still taking additional contributions. And so bats have been around for a really long time, and they are just simply amazing. And again, they do eat a lot of different insects. And so this summer, when you are barbecuing, having a picnic, or having s'mores, and you see bats flying, they are protecting you from mosquitoes and other insects. And so if you don't already, please follow us on social media. And at this time, I'm going to end the PowerPoint, and I'm going to stop sharing my screen. Let me see. No. And I'm going to bring out one of our guests tonight. Her name is Astrid, and she was found last summer with a fractured wing. We did try to repair her wing. Unfortunately, we did have to amputate because of severe infection. It was an open fracture, so the chances of that fracture healing correctly was not going to happen. So let me get her out, and I will turn on our other camera so that you can see her. She is going to have dinner with you tonight. So let me.
Stephanie, do you want me to highlight the iPhone? So
Yeah,
that way,
if you could, that would be great.
yeah, I'll see if I could pin it to the main part so everybody can catch it.
All right, let me make sure I know what I'm doing here. Okay. All right, can everyone see? This is Astrid. She is a hoary bat, so she is the largest bat found in Pennsylvania. And these are the larger bats. These are largest bats found in the New England area. I don't know if you can hear her crunching. Are there any questions for me as we are hanging out with Astrid?
Yeah, if you have a mic, you can feel free to unmute yourself if you want to ask a question. If you do not have a mic, you can always put the question in chat and I will ask. So go for it, people.
How did that white fungus disease start?
So it is a fungus that was historically in Europe, and a very, very long time ago, bats in Europe also suffered from the devastating effects of the fungus, but it's native there, so they were able to, there were survivors. But unfortunately, whether it were biologists or cavers, they didn't decontaminate their equipment. And so these little fungal spores traveled to the US and really became a problem. And so it's not just in the US that the white nose syndrome is an issue, it's also in Canada. And I didn't mention, but horay bats, this species of bat right here, they are in severe decline as well. And they are in severe decline from wind turbines. So it's an estimated that at each turbine, about 100 horays die every year at just one turbine. So their populations are being reduced to almost 50%, an estimation of 50% by 2050. And so there's a lot of research being employed for the clean energy of wind turbines to curtail the effects of birds and bats hitting those blades.
So we have a question from Brendan who says, I'm not able to see the bat. I don't know why. What should we do if we find bats living in a house?
If they're living in a house, you can contact a licensed wildlife removal company. And in most states, if not every state in the New England, you cannot use chemicals to kill them. You cannot capture or disturb them during certain times of the year. And you can't just seal them into a house. So there is a technique that they use one-way netting, and they install it in such a way that the bats can safely fly out, but not get back in. So over a period of time, all the bats will fly out because during the summer months, these guys have to eat every single day. And so they will fly out, but they won't be able to get back in. But exclusion isn't done in the summer. However, in early fall, when it still is warm, that's when exclusion is done. And I'm not sure why you can't see her.
Yeah, because I see her.
Okay.
I don't.
You don't see her?
Oh, so you might have to go to like change so you can see everyone's like icon and then you'll see it. That's what I had to do. I just had to find the right like square, like the right person streaming, you know? Do you know what I
'cause
mean?
I pinned it, but I don't know why. So it's not pinned for everyone?
Yeah.
That's strange.
But I do see her.
Hang
She's
on.
so beautiful.
Oh, thank you.
How's
Oh,
that?
there you go.
There we go.
Everybody could see her. Okay, I'm really sorry about that.
That's okay.
You see her little chomping.
She's
she
so
has-
cute. I'm gonna
she-
cry.
She has beautiful fur, and so the fur, the name horay comes from the word hoarfrost, Hoar, and that is usually the first frost of the year.
Ew.
They're eating, yeah, she's eating live mealworms. So again, they are insectivorous, and so we do feed them live mealworms. And we do gut load them with different types of vegetables. And you might find this funny. We will use different vegetables, usually carrots, sweet potato, collard greens, apple slices. But if we use broccoli, the bats will not eat the mealworms. They don't like broccoli apparently, so they won't eat them. So she is a hoary bat. They have about a 14-inch wingspan. You can see that beautiful fur. These are her little toes. I'll show you. Very little toes. They cling onto
Aw.
branches with those tiny little toes. They're also, their toes are like a comb. So it's a built-in brush. And so these guys, they remind me more so of flying cats than rodents because of their behavior. They are constantly grooming. Bats are very, very clean animals. And I didn't mention, but rabies is few and far between in bats because of their social behavior. They are very intelligent animals, which is why they have a closer association with dolphins and horses than anything else. And so when another roost mate is behaving oddly, these guys, not hoary bats, but usually big browns and other crevice bats that are colonial, they will remove themselves and kind of separate from that sick or oddly behaving individual. So rabies does not spread through a colony, it's an individual. And a lot of bats get rabies from feral cats, unfortunately, and other bats, of course. But a lot of these guys they behave in such a way that they don't spread disease. I don't know. Let me see if I can.
I have another question. It's kind of like a personal, silly question.
Yeah.
Do you have a favorite, like, species of bat?
Oh, goodness. You know, I had a program yesterday and they asked me the same thing. I really don't, because if you look at every single bat species, or it's a lot of bat species, but if you looked at some of them, they are all so unique and they all have strange personalities. I do like the horays because they're so big, but they're so sweet.
They like to eat too.
Yes, yes.
He's chomping away.
So we go through 500,000 mealworms every year, and I think we're going to surpass that this year because these guys are quite. We have quite a few bats right now. We unfortunately, it is migration season, and I really should put this in the PowerPoint. It is migration season for all bats, really. But our foliage roosting bats are coming from the south, and they're making some really long distance travels, some of them. And so they use what's called active hearing. So they don't use echolocation. It's our understanding that they don't use echolocation when they're migrating because they're not actively hunting. So they will use their active hearing, which is just their ears within the normal human hearing range. And they will use their eyesight and memory to remember landscapes. And so when they're flying through Philadelphia, which is a huge migratory pathway, they collide with the buildings. And so we have so many eastern red bats right now that are window collision. Oh, there you go. Now
I do have to say that if you do not follow them on Instagram, definitely do so because that's where I discovered them. So I've been following Astrid's journey for a while.
Aw, that's wonderful. Astrid, I love her. We had 2 horays come in last year and they both were really just in really bad shape, and Astrid was one of them, and they both survived and they're both education bats. But yeah, those thunderstorms.
She's not gonna go back out in the wild.
No, she can't fly. So if you look,
Aw.
let me give her a mealworm real quick. If you look, she has her wing is right here, but she has no wing on this side.
Aw.
So she's amputated because her radius, which is the same bone as ours, the long bone in our arm, they have a long radius as well. It was fractured in multiple places and it didn't heal incorrectly. And she's very messy. Oh my goodness. I think she's going to be about done soon. So, oh my goodness. She says she's not done. So these guys, the horays will eat 40 to 50 mealworms a night. And that's just some of them. We have about 120 bats 120 bats right now. You can see she's looking for her mealworm. Excuse me, I need my mealworm.
She's so cute.
When you feed them like that, do they eat all day or do you have meal times for them?
Yeah, so that's a good question. We start feeding at 5 p.m. and a lot of them, thank goodness, they self-feed. Astrid is one of the bats because of her disability. She has to be hand-fed. And so we hand feed her every single night.
Aw.
What's their lifespan? Is it like extended in captivity or the opposite or?
It is extended in captivity. These guys can survive. They're one of the lesser long-lived bats. That's a lot of L's, but they don't live as long as some other species. So their longevity is between 5 and 7 years. So they have a short lifespan, which makes me sad because I just love them so much. But this particular species will have twins. And they're just such a magnificent species of bat. All
Do
right,
they
Adam,
have,
I think you had
do they
enough.
have predators?
They do. So during the day, and I did mention this, there's so much to mention about bats. They're so cool. They do have predators during the day. They have hawks, which is one of the reasons they're nocturnal. They have a lot of predators during the day. In the summer, it's too hot for them, and there's not enough insects for them to even be considered active. So they have hawks, blue jays will harass them,
Ooh.
robins will harass them. So these
Aw.
guys can get attacked by lots of different bird species during the day. So it's one of the reasons they're nocturnal. Their nighttime predators are owls, foxes, and raccoons.
Raccoons.
Yeah, raccoons are a huge predator of them.
Wow.
So when they're echolocating, can humans hear it or is it like above our range?
Usually it's above our range. However, there is a species called the Western Mastiff bat, and I think it's called the Western Bonnet bat now. They have a lower range of echolocation that younger people can hear. But most of the time we can't. And thank God we can't because their echolocation is equivalent to, some of them are between a chainsaw and a jet engine.
Oh, boy.
So it's very loud.
Wow.
Yeah.
I'm assuming
Wow.
the insects can't hear them then.
The insects, actually there's like a cat and mouse game between the moths and the bats. Some species of moth have developed a way of hearing the echolocation and being able to avoid being eaten. But then the bats developed a way to turn off their echolocation and just listen with their giant ears. And so they can just hear without using echolocation. Do you want some water? Hold on
Oh
one
my God,
second.
she's so cute.
She's like, I don't want you to turn me that way. She has quite a full belly, so I'm not going to feed her anymore.
Aw.
I know. She ate enough. Do you want water? No, you want mealworms. All right, I'll give her one more and then we are going to say goodbye to her. Let me know if you have any questions.
What does she do during the day?
She sleeps during the day. She
And
sleeps most of the day. We have natural pine in her enclosure, and so she'll sleep in her branches. And we'll take her outside. They usually go outside during the day sometimes. Oh my goodness. All
You
right,
have
I'm
a
gonna,
okay. I was
sorry,
gonna
go
say,
ahead.
nope, go ahead, do what you gotta do.
Okay.
We do have a question in the chat though, if you want me to ask you.
Yeah.
So it says, when you get in adults that are in short rehab, do you try to get them self-feeding or do you stick to just hand feeding since they are not going to be longer term patients in theory? They have not had much success getting them self-feeding since mealworms are their natural diet. So I'm assuming Tiffany is involved in also some sort of a rescue.
So even though they might be in captivity for a few days, we do try to get them to self-feed because we do get in, yesterday we got in 3 bats. So this is the time of the year where bats are coming in continuously. And so we do try to get them to self-feed because it's better for them. It reduces their stress as opposed to us always handling them. And it reduces the amount of stuff that we have to do every night. So that's a good question.
Yeah, can y'all hear me? Making sure my
Yes.
mic's working. Yeah, I'm a manager at a wildlife rehabilitation center, actually in Houston. And
Oh, okay.
it's our second season really working with bats as a center, and we've tried doing the self-feeding. We haven't found a method that works to get them to self-feeding. Occasionally we'll see a we'll hear them like doing it on their own just out of nowhere, but it's been pretty hard for us to find a true method that we can get them self-feeding.
Oh, please email us. You can, our email is on our website, pabatrescue.org. We can
Okay.
work, we can work you through that because some of the bats, we call them B&B bats, bed and breakfast bats, because they are just so lazy. They don't want to feed themselves.
Okay, that's
Yeah.
fair.
Yes.
Okay, yeah,
And
then I'll
thanks for,
definitely be emailing you. Thank you.
yeah, thanks for joining us from so far away.
Oh yeah, no problem. My
Oh,
bat
that's awesome.
specialist is possibly on here, so you have two people from Houston
Oh,
listening.
great. Well, hello. Yeah, any more questions for me?
I have another personal question, I guess, about like bats and stuff. Or like, so you said that you worked with other like species of animals too. What specifically drew you to bat rescues or like rescuing bats specifically?
That is a wonderful question. I grew up in the middle of nowhere, Pennsylvania, and so I really was just an adventurous child, and so I wasn't really afraid of anything. My grandparents had a very old home that was dated back in the 1700s. It was a manor, and they had bats all the time, and so it really wasn't a big deal. As I got older, I moved to California, and I started working as a field biologist out there. I used to work with reptiles, and I also worked with shorebirds. I became licensed to do oil spill recovery for shorebirds. But then I met the bat rehabber in San Diego, and he was like, at the moment, he was one of the only ones besides in Northern California that was rehabbing bats. And so he got me interested in that. And I've worked with a lot of different species, but bats, I think it was because didn't know anything about them at that time. I knew a lot about other species because of what I was certified in doing, but I didn't know a lot about bats. And I think when we learn more about an animal or whatever, it kind of opens our eyes to what we thought we knew, but actually didn't. So that was how I became involved in bats, was just learning and just seeing them up close. It was just amazing. That was the long of the short. Sorry.
No, it's pretty awesome.
Yeah. Yeah. I think it's also important to teach younger generations not to be afraid of things because someday they will be we're leaving all this wildlife and nature to the future generations to take care of, essentially.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Sorry.
That's cool.
Yeah. Do you guys have any more questions? No. If you do, please feel free to email me. We are very busy this time of the year, but we would be more than happy to answer any questions that you have. And I thank you so, so much for joining us. I hope you enjoyed learning about bats and you got to see Astrid. So I hope you enjoyed that.
Oh, thank you very much. It was a lot of fun and very interesting.
Yeah, thank you so much.
You're
Thanks
welcome.
again, Steph.
Absolutely. Thank you. All right. Have a great evening. If you need anything, please email us.
Take care.
You
Bye-bye.
too. Bye.
Yeah.